welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you can see by the title today, I'm going to be talking about how I stay healthy basically and how I avoid getting sick. And I want to talk a little bit more about some of the changes I've been making lately. I don't follow a lot of the doctors that I used to follow anymore. I think a lot of it is deception, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. Now, it's not to necessarily like expose people as such, because that's not really what I'm about. It's more because I was preaching the same stuff. I was posting these people up everywhere, and I have to put my hands up and say, you know, I apologize. I think that stuff is wrong, and I don't want people to be led down the wrong path. So I think it's good to put a seed of thought in people's minds so they can go and research it themselves, and just basically think a little bit more about some of the things that they're talking about. And I think if it is Luciferian deception or anything has anything to do with any type of demonic type stuff, it is important to put that out there just so that people understand, because I think without knowing the tricks of the devil, you can't avoid them. So to some degree we need to kind of educate ourselves on what's going on, and I think because I put a lot of this stuff out, it's right that I explain why I don't follow any of this stuff anymore. And I want to talk a little bit more about my views on health and how they very slightly changed. So yeah, if you're interested to hear more, keep listening. So I don't ever really get sick, and some people might view that without understanding the deception as being quite cocky, or being what's the word, too brave to think, oh, it won't happen to you type thing. And when it comes to death, I think that's completely different. When it comes to chronic disease and the deception of Western medicine, to me that's different. I'm not cocky enough to say, oh, I'm not going to die, because I could get hit by a bus tomorrow if that's God's timing. So I'm not cocky enough to say that. What I would say is that if I know the Western medicine industry isn't quite being truthful in certain things, and there's a lot they are hiding, and I do know this for a fact. I've researched this for years, and I think it's becoming very apparent that there's a lot of deception in the Western medicine world. And I've seen this through my courses and through studying, and it's really sad. But by seeing that, I'm not going to get caught up or get sick from something that, if I know there's a way to go about it, or I know there's a way to not do that, or there's a way to get rid of it. And this is the thing, like, once you understand a little bit more about how the human body works, once you understand a lot more about God, you kind of don't view your health the same way or have that type of fear. Like, I don't live in fear of, oh my God, I'm going to get this and die. And, you know, because again, I think that's Luciferian deception, wanting us to always be fearful. We're going to get this, we're going to get that. You know, I've always said, like in my other videos, research the history of Big Pharma, research the Flexner report, research what happened with the cartels and Big Pharma, research what happened with the Cancer Institute, research the education boards they started. Just start to see where all this stuff comes from. Like I said, we have sick care, not health care. And I feel like a lot of it is profit. And unfortunately, you're the only one that's not making money. Yeah, I think once you understand that, it's because of that I'm not scared of certain things, because I've seen the truth. Not because I'm cocky enough to think, oh, I'm not going to die sort of thing. Like, you know, if God wants to take me by some sort of way, he'll take me, but it's certainly not going to be through Luciferian deception, that's for sure. So, you know, that's one thing that I always bear in mind. Like I said, I can't remember the last time I had a cold. I've never had the flu in my whole entire life. I have had some issues in the past related to my diet, which I spoke about previously, which was my thyroid. Like, I've had just like low vitamins, but I've never had symptoms. Even when I got diagnosed with a thyroid problem, I had no symptoms. I didn't feel unwell. I didn't have any of the common thyroid, because I was actually diagnosed with what was it? Hypothyroidism, but they called it asymptomatic because I had no symptoms. And actually, you're meant to put on weight. I mean, everyone was like, oh, you have hyper, which is when it speeds up and you lose weight. And I'm like, no, I've got the opposite. So they're like, oh, that's weird. I literally had zero symptoms. The same, even when my B12 was low, I'd felt no difference when it was low to when it was high. I just never felt the symptoms of any of this stuff. But yeah, I got diagnosed with it, but I cured it naturally. 3 months later, I retook my bloods, and I had no problem, because they were basically saying I had an autoimmune issue with my thyroid. And I spent 3 months doing things to help my thyroid, and 3 months later my bloods were then normal. So that was one thing that I had a personal experience in curing something they said I couldn't. I remember the doctor saying to me, oh, there's no, because I said I don't want the medication. They were trying to put me on medication for life. Obviously, it's not like the worst medication out of all of them. It's not the worst thing to have by any means, but I didn't want to go on any type of medication. Obviously, it goes against my beliefs to some degree. And don't get me wrong, I'm not categorizing acute trauma in this, because I think some things in acute trauma are brilliant. I'm talking more about chronic disease here, but I didn't want to take the medicine. So basically I said to the doctor, I'm going to just change my lifestyle, my diet, I'll come back in 3 months. And the doctor turned around and said to me, oh, there's no evidence to support that changing your diet will help a thyroid problem. And I said, oh, why is that? And she said, because nobody will fund the research. And I'm like, wonder why. So yeah, basically I went away. Now I knew I took certain herbs, and again, I'm not saying, I'm saying this as a personal experience. Always go and check with the herbalist before you ever take anything, because everybody's different. But I took sea moss and bladderwrack. I know they both were high in iodine. I know it was going to help feed my thyroid, because usually that's connected to liver and kidney function as well. And I just cleaned up my diet a lot more, ate a lot more plant-based type foods. And yeah, just tried to have a healthier mindset, decrease my stress, you know, stuff like that. And I honestly think a lot of it was down to the herbs and the diet. So yeah, I went back and things were looking good, and my vitamins and minerals were a lot better. So like I said, I do feel like there's other ways of going about things, which is why I don't feel like I get sick. But I don't feel like that's the whole picture, because even when I never got sick, there was a period in time where I literally ate shit all the time. Like, never really ate fruit and veg, ate takeaway all the time. Like, literally my diet was bad. Like, I was always eating chips and fried chicken and whatever else. I didn't eat healthy. I literally ate loads of takeaway, and I still never got sick. I don't believe it's 100% just down to your diet. I think a lot of it is your mindset. And like I said, it's not that I disregard what some of these doctors are saying, because I of course think they mix the truth with some lies, whether they know about the lies or not. Like I said, when I speak about these doctors, I can't speak for their intentions. I don't know if they know what they're doing is involved with this stuff or not. I don't know that. So I can't speak for whether they know what, you know, they actually understand what they're doing or what that world's about. I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But either way, it's still involved in it. But I do think a lot of what they say is still a lot of truth in it. I totally believe that if you're stressed all the time, there's lots of hard evidence out there that shows stress causes illness. Frequency type emotions like stress, anger, all this kind of stuff all the time, I totally believe that you can get sick. From that, we know that stress causes so many body problems in the body, you know, apart from all the hormones and chemicals it releases that are dangerous. You know, it changes our blood flow, it changes the way our cells communicate, it puts stress on our muscular tissue, it just a whole bunch of things. And I've read a lot of science around that, so I know that that's true. And I definitely believe our mindset is a very large part of it. You can eat the best diet in the world, stay in stress and be sick anyway. And that's not to say that you... How was that noise? Sorry. Why is my window open? So sorry about that. Did not realise my window was open this whole time. But yeah, don't get me wrong, like, you can eat the best diet in the world, be stressed all the time and get sick anyway, because I feel like if you're in prolonged states, you're in a constant survival mode. And I do still totally believe in all of that. You know, if you just get like very short periods of stress where you're maybe just stressed for like, you know, a day or so, I don't believe that's the end of the world. But it's when we're in and out of it, or constantly in it for a long period of time, that's when I think there becomes problems. And for me, I definitely think the way we think has an effect on our neurons in our brain. I think it programs the neurons, which then send signals to our body. So I think if we are thinking, you know, in a more positive way, like we're happier in ourselves, we're not stressed all the time, we learn strategies, because you kind of say you're never going to get stressed, but you have to learn strategies to be able to cope with that and diminish the stress. And I think if we do that, then that's a major part of it. And I think that's one reason why I never really got sick, because I didn't live in fear either. Like, a lot of people live in fear of getting sick all the time. And I never really had that. I was very like confident in my body. I didn't have these like negative thoughts about illness. Even when I was eating rubbish, I didn't eat it thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get ill. You know, I didn't have that type of negative thought. And I do think that does play a massive part. And when a lot of these doctors talk about this stuff, I completely agree with that. I just think their methods they're using to actually help you once you are sick, or to prevent it, are not good. But I think some of the science they're talking about, not all of it, don't get me wrong, there's definitely some fake science going on from both sides, although it really is the same side. But But yeah, I do believe still some of what they're talking about in terms of like the neuron and how certain things have effects and things like that, and you know, a lot of the neuroscience, I do believe in that. So that's another reason why I feel like I don't get sick, because of that reason. I'm very confident in my own body's ability in terms of my immune system and stuff like that. So there's that. So I think a part of it is diet. I think that does play a major part. I think a part of it is obviously avoiding toxins. But like I said, we can't avoid everything. And this is why I say, like, I'm not somebody that's completely anal because of this reason. Like, if I sometimes want to eat chips, occasionally I will, like, obviously in moderation. If I want to have like a bit more of a processed product, very occasionally I will. Obviously, I still use some toxic products. I'm not completely toxic free. Obviously, the air I'm breathing in every day is horrendous. The water I'm bathing in is not great. You know, the soil my food's grown in is not great. You know, like there's all these kind of things, the air, the water. You can't always control everything. Yes, you shouldn't go wild, don't get me wrong. You've got to try and control the things you can, but I'm not completely anal about it, because I don't believe that's the only thing we need to be healthy. I do believe we can override certain things. And another aspect to that I'd add in, other than the mindset and the diet, is through God. I do believe there's certain times where, you know, people have healed through God. And I think that's a major part. I think having a relationship with God and living the way you're supposed to live and not sinning, you're less likely to get sick because of that as well. So I think there's different parts to it. And it's the same when you look at any type of problem. It's usually not, unless it's like very obvious, like you've been hit by a car, we know exactly what's caused that injury. There's often multiple things feeding into things, particularly with chronic illness. So you can't just kind of put it down to one thing. And this is why I say healthcare should be personalized. But I think there's a lot of like spiritual aspects missing from that, which to some people that don't believe in this stuff will find this stuff crazy. But if you've read about this, then you will understand this. If not, and you're willing, definitely read about it. But like I said, I think there's that part that's missing to it. And that's where they're going wrong in terms of some of these doctors, because, you know, like I said, it's great to minimize things where you can. We can't be perfect, but you should obviously minimize things. But there's an odd little thing here and there. Like I said, if you've got the other things going quite well, you're probably going to be okay. Because again, I know lots of people that do everything fairly perfectly, but don't live the life they're supposed to live, even though they're healthy and they don't use certain products or do certain things, and still something happens and they die. So there's clearly more to this. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the doctors and then go into like more of the spiritual side that I feel like I didn't speak a lot about before in health, or that I was missing a little bit. Now, some of these doctors, like especially the ones that are talking about this whole situation that's been going on that we've been in for the last year or so, I do believe a lot of them to some degree are probably misleading. And again, one of these ones that I wanted to talk about was Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the reason why I talk about him, there's a lot more doctors than him. And I'm going to talk a bit more about this when I do my video on law of attraction as well. But it's because I followed him, got all these books, literally spoken about him all the time. And I was like, how did I miss this? Like, oh my God, the devil's deception is so good sometimes. I was like, how the hell did I miss this? And I realized that someone wrote a comment on my YouTube, because I thought to myself, like, I still believe in a lot of what Dr. Sebby said. Even though, like I said, I still believe there's parts missing, but he did speak about God. He was a man of God, and that's something that I really rate. But I still think there's more to it than just diet. But I don't think the diet part is necessarily deception by any means. So I still totally believe in that. But I was like, how did I miss this? Because how is there someone like Dr. Sebby who's making the same claims as Dr. Joe Dispenza? He's claiming to cure in what the Western world says is, and the rest of the world that's been influenced by that, you know, we can't cure these certain diseases, which we know to some degree they are lying. And, you know, both of these doctors, or these doctors, I should say, claim that, you know, they cure the same things. But yet one was persecuted constantly in the media, always bad press, arrested, sent to jail, basically killed off. There have been like so many holistic doctors in a small period of time who have been killed off for speaking out, or suicide, as they like to call it. But yet there's this other doctor who's claiming the same things as these other ones, or these other practitioners, but yet has 1.5 million followers. Is definitely not, yes, he might be persecuted in the, you know, the rest of the science world, etc., because that's man's view. But the elite don't mind pushing this kind of stuff because they happily let it flood across all of their platforms. And then there's little people like me who has literally like no following, and many other people like me that will post certain videos and get censored straight away. I'm like, logically thinking about this, there's something here that is not connecting. I'm like, how has this been allowed, and how is this pushed, and how have they been interviewed on these channels, but you'll never see another side of the stuff. You'll never see someone go on these type of channels and talk about the side of God and healing. I don't see that on these big channels like London Real and stuff like that, who I used to follow a lot. You know, but they'll be allowing all these type of doctors on there. Like, I think to some case, like, people say, oh, you know, but if someone's at least talking a bit of the truth, then, you know, that's great. We shouldn't, you know, say to people, you know, they're misleading people, and, you know, we shouldn't speak about that. And I'm like, yes, we should, because it's still Lucifer's deception. Why would you want to be under that? You know, like, people need to understand that there's a link missing still. These people aren't giving you the full picture. And I'm not doing it to like hate on these people or anything like that, because don't get me wrong, there's a lot of truth in it. And it's easier to believe a lie if it's mixed with truth. We all know this. So I just feel like you're still under Lucifer's deception. And that is a problem. Like I said, this is a spiritual war. This is not about the flesh. So I think we need to talk about some of this stuff, because I do believe they're using some of the demonic world to do what they're doing. And this is why some guy, and I'm going to put a clip in here in a minute of him talking about this, but some guy on my YouTube said to me, look up Dr. Joe Dispenza and giant beings. So I was like, okay. So I went onto YouTube and I put that in, and a video came up with him talking about giant beings. And he was basically saying, and I'm going to put a clip of this in a minute, about how, you know, there's these other things that other entities he's connected with, and how they're really interested in us, obviously, and talking about all this kind of stuff. And I was like, he's communicating with demons. I was like, it just clicked in my brain. I was like, oh. And then obviously when I went back to look at his methods and what he was using, it was all this chakra meditation stuff, and this all goes back into New Age. And I was like, that's it. That's why he's allowed to do what he's doing, because he's using this demonic and New Age type stuff. So they don't mind, because again, it's what they do in the Western world, where they split it up into two camps, like white and black magic. It's the same thing, you know. And what they've done is made the white stuff seem all airy fairy and like it's not that bad and blah blah blah. So you kind of go into it thinking it's okay, and this is exactly what they're doing with this stuff. Exactly the same. And it's the same meditation type techniques that I've been warning and saying people need to be careful of, and that I've stopped doing. Again, I'm not doing it to judge people, I'm doing it out of love, because I don't want people to be deceived. I don't want Lucifer to win out here. So, you know, and it was the same stuff that if you go back to ancient, you know, Asian practices and all this kind of stuff, it all links back to the same demonic stuff, the worship of other gods, the serpent. It all goes back to the same stuff. And that's why I was like, that must be why he's allowed to do what he's allowed to do and get the following, and why anybody else is blocked or killed off. And I was like, okay, now it makes sense. Because they're getting people in deception, so they don't mind that stuff being out there as much. Yes, a lot of people in the sciencey world are going to think they're crazy, of course. That's nothing to do with the fact because what they're saying is true. It's just because a lot of people don't believe in that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know if these doctors know about that stuff and they know what they're doing, or whether they just think these entities are something good and they don't understand it. I can't vouch for that. I'm not going to judge them on that, because I don't know them, so I don't know their intentions. But I just know that the method they're using is bad, because I'm like, look at the only difference between the doctors that get killed and the ones that don't. It's the method they use, you know. And when you see the method, that's when you start to understand where the deception comes from. So I just want to say to people, be very, very careful with this stuff. You don't have to believe me, of course. I don't even think you should. I think you should go off and do your own research. But I think you should definitely let this sink a seed in your mind. If you are somebody that's doing all of these type of practices or using these doctors to heal, it's often temporary healing. The devil cannot heal long term. The demonic world cannot do that. You can only do that through God.
Done several interviews, many interviews, and I get very often this question, and I'm quite intrigued by it, about those beings that seem to show up within your work. Who are they? How long have you been there?
Well, let's talk about how we could actually see them first, and then I'll talk about them, because I'm not the type of person that ever looks for them. I'm not the type of person that spends a lot of time trying to connect with beings. But think about this: the brain could only see equal to how it's wired. If there's no circuitry for patterns in the brain, then you don't see reality, right? It's called pattern recognition. So what we're seeing, and it's happened to me so many times, let's say you have a profound mystical experience. There's 4 states of consciousness. There's wakefulness, there's sleep, there's dreaming, and then there's a transcendental moment. Now, that transcendental moment is something that we have been working to induce. In fact, we now know we can induce it. We've measured it. We know the pineal gland in certain areas of the brain become active, that the limbic brain all of a sudden moves and has a full-on sensory experience without their senses. In other words, whatever's going on between their ears is more real than anything they've ever experienced before. So if your senses are heightened, right now, if everything you were seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, if your senses were heightened, your awareness of everything around you would be heightened as well. Well, awareness is consciousness, and you can't have consciousness without energy. So in a sense then, if a person has a transcendental experience and they start interacting with beings that are not physical, if they have that really profound experience, that experience is going to be logged in their brain because experience enriches their brain, yes? The end product of an experience is an emotion, but you wouldn't feel fear from these beings. You would feel a kind of a love or a grace or a presence or an acceptance. And so then you wouldn't be intimidated or afraid of them. You wouldn't throw them into the box of some dogma or superstition.
That's deception.
It's a profound moment where you're feeling such profound and intense love that you're leaning in and paying attention to the pictures in your mind. And in a sense, the stronger the emotion you feel from that inner event, the amount of gratitude or love or joy that you sensing these presences in the room during our week-long events.
Demons.
Started at the week-long events.
Well, it started at the 5-day, 4.5-day workshops. I started, out of the corner of my eye, started perceiving certain things, primarily when we were doing the pineal gland meditations. I had other meditations as well, but there was an energy in the room that I noticed, and they're very noble, and they're very interested in what we're doing. They're not small. They're very, very tall.
How tall?
Most of them probably 3 meters, maybe more tall. I mean, they're beautiful and big, and they have this grace about them and this presence, and they're very interested. They observe, and when I started seeing them and perceiving them, I never really asked who they were. I just observed, and for me, when we do the pineal gland meditations, I'm up at 3 in the morning or 2:30 in the morning, and we're going, and everybody's sitting up and laying down, and I'm awake the entire time, and I'm working with the audience, and I start doing the meditations with my eyes closed while I'm doing it, and a lot of times I open my eyes and I'm in theta. The door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind is wide open, and in a sense, I'm dreaming with my eyes open, and all of a sudden I start perceiving things. Well, when that started happening, people started reporting things back to me, and sometimes it was kind of cool.
And that leads me on to my another point of an area I felt like I was really missing when it comes to our health. Again, if you're not somebody that believes in this stuff, you're going to think what I'm saying is crazy. That's fine. But I hope to some people this will resonate, or it will at least get some people thinking, because I really had to deep this stuff myself. And I was like, there's definitely a spiritual aspect to illness. Now, watching loads of ex-occultist practices. Now, everybody is pretty, well, not everybody, sadly, but a lot of people now are very, very well aware of ritual practices. So we know they're doing witchcraft, right? You've heard of a lot of people here with all the weird stuff they do with coffins and bones, all this kind of stuff. So we need to understand that what they're doing with that is putting illness onto people. And I think it was John Romero's video that I was watching when he was talking about he'd put cancer on people, or he'd wish death on people, and literally like a week later they'd be dead. And the only people it wasn't working on was the true believers and things like that. So they weren't being touched by the witchcraft, but everybody else was. And this goes this goes kind of links in with the African witch doctors and what they're doing. That healing is temporary. That is definitely not through God. And just watching their practices, you just know it's not godly, because it doesn't look or feel it. It's like you just know by looking at it that it's not good, and it links all back to that kind of stuff. So it doesn't heal you long term, but I do think people can get illnesses spiritually. I think demonically you can be sick. It can cause, I think that demonic type world can cause illness, whether it be somebody putting witchcraft on you, whether it be a demon that you're dealing with personally. I definitely think that you can put that onto people and that can come to you through the demonic world or through sin. And I think that's another thing to be aware of, because I think that's not touched on a lot. I think a lot of mental health and psychosis is demonic possession. I really, really, truly believe this. And I know if people don't think the demonic world is real, that's not going to resonate with them as much, but I really think it's something we need to be looking into, because it's nothing to joke. But like I said, if people don't think it's real, go into it. And I'll say this in all my videos, nearly. I don't want people to go into it, but it will show you how real it is. Let's just say that. So yeah, I definitely think that plays a part in illness. And that's why I said earlier, I think if you're somebody that's not living a righteous life, or you're sinning a lot, I 1,000,000% believe that illness can come because of that and disease can come because of that. And I think the demonic world definitely has the power to do that. And I think that's something that I missed a lot before, that maybe should have been put in there. And this is why I don't think it's as simple just to say change your diet. I think there's a lot more to it than that, depending on, you know, who you are as a person and your lifestyle. But that's something I just missed out before, and I really wanted to touch on that, because a lot of even what some of the other doctors are teaching, like Dr. Greg Braden and stuff like that, a lot of that science is fraud science, and I was duped by it. Hands up, I was duped by it for years, because I'm a proper sciencey type person, so I was duped by that, and I'm going to be doing a video on that soon, as part of the law of attraction stuff, because I want people to see that that science has been frauded, and it's the same problems that we're getting with what the elite are doing with the medical industry science. It's happening on this side too, from the same people, of course. But yeah, of course they're going to infiltrate that side of things. Why wouldn't they? So I think health is a multitude of things. I think you've got to take the spiritual aspect. I think you've got to take a nutritional aspect. I think you've got to take a exercise aspect, and I think you've got to take a mindfulness aspect in terms of looking after our emotions and looking after our mental health. I think it's a mixture of everything. This is why I kind of wanted to do an update on a video and explain why I felt this way and why I don't listen to these doctors anymore. Look at a lot of what they're using to heal. That will always tell you a lot. And I think if they're using that side but not talking about how they're using it and they know what they're doing, that's even worse. But just look into it, look into their methods. Be very careful with these meditation type methods that they're giving people and these visualization things. Understand that that's the same stuff they teach in the occult. So be very, very careful. Just because they've dressed it up in a bow, it's still shit as shit, even if you put glitter on it. So just bear that in mind. I just want people to look into it, because I was fooled by this stuff for so long. If I can stop someone being fooled by it for as long as I was, then that's amazing. But yeah, I hope you found this video interesting. I hope it's more of give you more an understanding of why I don't feel like I ever get sick. I literally don't. Like I said, I've never really had that type of symptoms, so I think there's all of that added into it. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you've got any comments, please leave them below, and I will see you guys in my next YouTube video.